Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wrestling the Territories podcast. If you're new to the channel, I do podcasts here. I used to be a paranormal investigator. Now I do wrestling podcasts on this channel. So you can go back and check any of my library out. I've done a lot of investigations for where I'm at here in Western North Carolina. So if you want to check those out, you can too. I do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and maybe that subscribe too if you like what you see. Tonight we're going to talk about the TV title, the national and world television title back in the late 70s to early 90s. And we're going to talk about the different wrestlers who held those titles and for how long and how many times they held them. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is Paul Jones. Paul Jones was a multiple time television champion, and he held that title back in the late 70s. So he was one of those that very popular back in the day and was very over in the Mid Atlantic territory. And he held the title 5 times. And in that 5 times, he held them 679 days, which that's quite a bit. I mean, for a combined 5 time reign. But Paul Jones, when he first became the television champion, his first title he won was from Ivan Koloff on July 8th, 1974. That first title reign was 108 days. So Paul Jones, one of the best world TV champions of all time. All right, the next one we'll be talking about is Tony Blanchard. Tony Blanchard, very well recognized as being a television champion, and people talk about Tony being a television champion a lot of bit. When you talk about Tony Blanchard, you talk about him being a television champion. So you had to go into the 80s at this point. And Tully Blanchard comes in at a time around 1984, and he becomes a television champion and defeats Mark Youngblood on March 28th, 1984. Now, Tully, some people think he may have had a lot of title runs or a lot of days, and he did have a lot of days, but his title runs were not very much. He was only a 3 time TV champion. He did hold it for a total of 685 days in all those reigns. His first reign as television champion was his longest, and that after he defeated Mark Youngblood in Spartanburg, South Carolina. He held the title 353 days before dropping it to Dusty Rhodes on March 16th, 1985. So he held it right at a year, almost a year, and it was a very long reign for him and defended against a lot of people on TV, including Ricky Steamboat at Starrcade 84. But Tully Blanchard, one of the best television champions of all time, arguably one of the best ever. All right, our next one is Double A Arn Anderson, the Enforcer. Arguably one of the best television champions of all time, just like Tully Blanchard was. Excuse me. And Arn Anderson first got his title reign, not when he stole the title from Dusty Rhodes back in '85, but his actual first title reign began on January 4th, 1986. He held the title for 248 days before he dropped it to Dusty Rhodes on September 9th, 1986. He did win the television championship by defeating Wahoo McDaniels in a tournament finals to claim the championship. And if you remember, Dusty had to vacate it at one time back in '85. It was in October of '85 when Dusty had to vacate due to an injury, which ended up leading him to be the contender for Ric Flair's world title. But Arn Anderson would hold the TV title uh, through the '80s and early '90s. So Arn Anderson, a lot of people do associate the television championship with Arn Anderson, but 248 days was his first title reign. That was pretty dang good. Not too bad, not too shabby. Okay, as we continue on, our next one I want to talk about is Nikita Koloff. And Nikita's reign was only once for 162 days. And the reason why that's so significant about Nikita Koloff's reign as a television champion is the sheer fact he was the one that combined the NWA and UWF TV titles. So therefore, he didn't have but one title reign, and it was 162 days, which isn't bad at all. But the biggest thing about Nikita Koloff was the title unification at Starrcade '87 against Terry Taylor. So he defeated Tully Blanchard after Tully held it for 263 days. on Tully's third and final title run. So he defeated him um, in on NWA Pro Wrestling. And like I say, he held the title for 162 days. If you've never seen the championship match between Nikita Koloff and Tully Blanchard, you owe yourself to do that. It's right here on YouTube. You can find it. Also, if you have the Peacock Network, you can go to WWE and check it out. But that match is one of my favorite matches. I've gone back and watched it several times. It's a very good match. But Nikita Koloff's run as a television champion for both NWA and UWF, very significant. Okay, our next television champion we're going to talk about is Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stunning Steve Austin. Steve Austin, back in the early WCW days, just right after it becomes WCW, he defeats Bobby Eaton. Bobby Eaton's title reign was only 15 days after defeating Arn Anderson, but Stunning Steve Austin, 329 days in his first title reign. He did have a total of 2 reigns for 431 days, but his second one was only 102 days. He lost to Barry Windham and then won it back and then lost to Ricky Steamboat. So he lost it to some couple of legends. And even though Steve Austin was still kind of early in the business, still learning the business, he is absolutely one of the best television champions ever. And he did have a good significant reign, title runs. All right, our next one is Mike Rotunda. And he held the title early on. A lot of people remember his title reign when he defeated Nikita Koloff. His actual first title reign was in 1982 in December 25th on Christmas Day, Charlotte, North Carolina. He defeated Bad Leroy Brown and became the champion. He held that title for 59 days before dropping it to Dick Slater on February 22nd, 1983. So just kind of remember that was before the World Television Championship reign. So it was still the Mid Atlantic version at that time. So that's something to kind of keep in mind there. But he did hold the title again for a second time. This time 335 days. Now this was kind of early on when WCW was starting to take over a little bit, but it was still recognized as the NWA TV Championship. So he won on January 26, 1988, defeating Koloff. And that 335-day reign would last until Rick Steiner defeated him on December 26, 1988 at Starrcade. Steiner would hold the title for 56 days, dropping it back to Mike Rotunda on February 20th, 1989 at the Chi-Town Rumble pay-per-view. This would be Mike Rotunda's third and final reign. It would last 39 days until he dropped it to Sting on March 31st, 1989. Mike Rotunda, NWA TV champ. All right, we're going to talk about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes, a 3-time TV champion, just much like he was a 3-time World Heavyweight champion in the NWA. His first title reign came in 1985. He defeated Tully Blanchard. This is where the time change for the TV title comes about. So it goes from being the Mid-Atlantic version of the TV title to the World TV title. And the reason is because Jim Crockett had purchased Georgia Championship Wrestling, so they had their version of the TV title. Mid-Atlantic had their version of the TV title, so they decided to name it the World TV title. So in his reign, after he defeated Tully Blanchard on March 16, 1985, he would be rechristened the World Television Champion, which is a title belt that most people enjoy having if you have a replica like I do. And I've always been a big fan of that TV belt. That's why I had to get a replica. But anyway, so Dusty Rhodes, his first reign, March 16th, 1985, defeating Tully Blanchard. 43 days, he would drop the title back to Tully in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dusty would regain the title on, so he dropped the title April 28th, 1985, regained the title July 6th, 1985. That was the cage match, a Great American Bash, where he got to have Baby Doll as his valet for a while. Then, due to the injury, as we talked about earlier, He dropped the title, and Arn Anderson became the champion on January 4th, 1986. But on September 9th, 1986, would be Dusty Rhodes' final run at the TV title to last 79 days. He won it on September 9th, 1986. In Columbia, South Carolina, then he dropped the title to Tully Blanchard in Greensboro on Starrcade and November 27th, 1986. Dusty Rhodes will always go down as one of the best TV champions ever. Okay, our next one, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So Steamboat was one of those that held it in the 70s and then again in the 90s when it was WCW, just changing over from NWA and all that. But he did have a total of four title reigns as TV champion. We'll get into that a little bit. Ricky Steamboat Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling event on July 15th, 1977, defeated Ric Flair to become the TV champion. He would lose it to Baron von Raschke on October 12th, 1977. Regained it from Paul Jones on June 10th, 1979, right here in Asheville, North Carolina. That title reign was 136 days on his second run as the television champion. Then it would go on down, and you had to scroll if you're looking at some of these things or looking back at the TV title. You have to go down into the 90s before you see Ricky Steamboat again. His third title reign comes September 2nd, 1992, defeating Steve Austin. Title reign would last 27 days. This was at the Clash of Champions, number 20, I believe it was. He would lose the title to Scott Steiner, but Steiner only held it for a day. Then he left to go to the WWF. Ricky Steamboat would hold it again August 18th, 1993, his fourth and final title reign. That was a 32-day. Defeated Paul Orndorff at the Clash of Champions. His total run was 314 days between all those four title runs. So Ricky Steamboat, I had to put him on the list because of the multiple times he was a champion, both in the Mid Atlantic territory and in the WCW era. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed what I've gone through these TV title reigns, and I want to put a couple honorable mentions in there as well. And one is Steve Regal. Steve Regal held it four times for a total of 558 days in the WCW time. This was kind of past the NWA stage, a little later into WCW. But Steven Regal, honestly, will go down as one of the best television champions ever. He was really good at what he did, a good heel, and they definitely put it on him because he could be on TV quite a bit and defending it. And he did such a great job, much like Tully and Arn did. Steve Regal's right there with him as far as TV titles go. Jake Snake Roberts, when it comes to Georgia Championship Wrestling territory, him and Ron Garvin flipped that title back and forth quite a bit. Both of them being real good at TV champions for sure. And so I wanted to throw those in as an honorable mention. And also, just because he was such a good tag team wrestler and he worked so hard and did so good, Bobby Eaton. Now, his title was only 15 days, but he defeated Arn Anderson for one, and for two, it was just a big accomplishment for him to become a singles champion after being the United States, tag team champion and world tag team champion. Bobby Eaton, I wish he had a longer title run. It'd been great. He's one of my favorites, and maybe I should have let him have for at least 30 days. I mean, that'd have been good instead of the 15. A lot of people say this because it wasn't good on the mic, and that may have been why. But you know, 30 days is not too much to ask for him to be a TV champion, right? But those are pretty good. So personally, my favorite TV champion of all time has to be Arn Anderson with Tully Blanchard right there with him. And I think those two really did a great job being on TV all the time, defending the TV title each and every against jobbers or the big guys, so to speak. But Arn and Tully Blanchard are probably the best two TV champions ever. And if I had to look at the list, Paul Jones, out of all these I talked about, held it the most at five times at 679 days. And all these guys I looked at, as far as remember, it's the total days with the combined runs as champions. So Arn Anderson was a four-time champion. He had the longest days at 877. Tully Blanchard's was a three-time at 685. But Arn Anderson, in my opinion, out of all of them, would be at the top. Then Tully Blanchard right there next to him. If I had to go on down the list and look, I definitely have to put Paul Jones in there, right there with them as well. And Mike Rotunda, if you go back and look at his title reign and how he did in the 80 in eight, excuse me, in 1988, not his first title reign, but when he had the feud with Rick Steiner, but he was just as good as Tully and Arn was in 85 and 86. They needed somebody to hold that title, and he did a heck of a job as being the TV champion. So definitely Mike Rotunda in there for sure. Dusty Rhodes, just because Dusty Rhodes is Dusty Rhodes. Three times he held it for 227 days. Mike Rotunda's, by the way, was 433 days. I meant to say that too. Steve Austin's two title reigns was 431. Steve Austin, like I say, the early days were going from NWA to WCW, but he still held the NWA version of the TV belt for a while. So did Barry Windham. I think it was right around the time he and Barry was going back and forth. That's when they brought the new title in. And but so that means Bobby Eaton was still holding the NWA version of the TV title when he held it too. Um, Ricky Steamboat 4 times. I mean, all these guys I talked about, for the exception of Nikita Koloff, had multiple title reigns. And the reason, like I say, I put Nikita in there just because he unified the UWF and NWA TV titles. So that's very, very significant and should always be put in the list there. And again, like I say, these title matches, if you can go back and watch them do it, ones between Dusty Rhodes and Tully Blanchard really good. Between Dusty and Arn was really good. Nikita Koloff Tully Blanchard match, you definitely want to see that if you haven't already. It's good. So and if you can find any Paul Jones, it's kind of hard to find his stuff because it's back in the mid to late '70s, and so those things aren't always easy to find for him. But Paul Jones was one of the most popular wrestlers in the Mid Atlantic Territory back in the day until he turned heel. So honestly, all these champions are worth going back and looking their matches, checking out the title changes, the feuds that they had. But honestly, one of my favorite championships of all time is the NWA World TV title. I do have it over here somewhere. I think it's right over there. I don't know if you can see it. So I do have the TV title, which is if of all the replicas I've gotten, I've got five different ones. That's my favorite of all. So I had to have that one. If I didn't have no other title belt replica, that would have been the one I would have for sure. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Let me know what you want to see. You may go over the U.S. title, the tag team titles, maybe sometime. We'll talk about all that. But until next time, God bless. See you soon.